Welcome back to Raw Politics. Now, CO2 emissions are in the air in Strasbourg this week. MEPs are gearing up to vote on how much cars and vans will be allowed to pollute. Now, the issue has become politically toxic with discord within groups and parties on how much carbon can be curbed without damaging the economy. The Commission was accused last year of giving the car industry a, quote, early Christmas present with its original proposals. Now, in the wake of the Dieselgate scandal, in which Volkswagen admitted cheating emissions tests, Parliament has taken a harder line. Wednesday's vote could offer an indication of whether industry trumps ecology for MEPs. And I am joined in the studio to talk about cutting carbon by Miriam Dalli. She is from the S&D Group. Now, you are the rapporteur of that report that we are talking about, and also by Benjamin Krieger, your head of government affairs of CLEBA. This is an automotive industry association. All right, I just want to bring in some numbers before we get into the discussion, because the Commission has pushed to reduce emissions by 15% by 2025 and 30% by 2030. The Parliament has been much stronger in that, calling for 20% reduction by 2025, 45% by 2030. So I'm just reading you these numbers because the point there is the Commission had one proposal, and Miriam, I want to go to you. Your report is very, very ambitious. Is it too ambitious, as industry would probably say?
I don't think it is too ambitious because it is not a question of the environment versus the industry, but it is a balance between the environment and the industry. All figures are showing that if we are more ambitious, we can actually continue leading the race. Because I believe that if we continue pushing change, if we continue postponing, we will be having a larger negative impact on the industry's competitiveness and ultimately jobs. And I'm saying this because all the studies are showing that if we look at 40% CO2 reduction and even more than that, it is a question of making sure that we try to keep in line with the Paris Agreement targets, but at the same time making sure that we do not let other continents run ahead of us when it comes to cleaner technology. And I'm speaking about cleaner technology because ultimately I'm not interested in one technology over the other. I'm interested in having a mix of different technologies which can actually and really and truly help us achieve the reductions in CO2, both for 2025 and also for 2030, and I say beyond that, because we need to have a long-term pathway even to give peace of mind to industry itself.
I mean, from the automotive industry, I mean, you would disagree with that, because from the automotive industry, do you think this report is fair?
Well, first of all, from the point of view of the automotive suppliers, that's parts and components that go into vehicles, the objective of reducing emissions is fully embraced. That is a shared objective. And we would like to contribute to sharing.
Then this ambitious target should not be a problem for the industry.
We feel the proposal by the European Commission was very balanced, taking into account many different factors, impact on the industry and the environment, as Ms. Dalli has pointed out. What we believe also is that if we go far beyond the proposal of the Commission, then negative impact would be stronger. Then we would go much more into the direction of prescribing specific technologies, and this inherently would be a very bad outcome for industry.
Well, you're talking, it's almost like invest now and reap the rewards later, isn't it, for the industry? I mean, why is it such a big deal if the industry doesn't just go far now and reap the rewards of cutting emissions later?
Well, many of our members, actually all our members, want to go far. The ones that are active in drivetrain business, for
the suggestion of Miriam Dalli, the 40% reduction, isn't it?
Which, on the drivetrain, for example, which is relevant. The problem is with the very high proposals that are currently under discussion in the European Parliament, we are not going towards a transformation of the industry and of our mobility towards more electrified drivetrains, for example, but we would risk a disruption. We would risk a negative impact on employment, for example.
But that's what Miriam was just disagreeing with, that in fact it will not have. Is that what you're saying?
Even the latest figures presented by the Commission itself speak and show that the more ambitious we are, the more jobs we are creating. So if we're speaking, for example, about a 40% or even a 45% CO2 reduction, we are looking at creating more jobs. If we are producing batteries within the European Union itself, and we're speaking about a 40% CO2 reduction, we're speaking about about the creation of 92,000 jobs. If we go further than that, 45%, we're speaking about the creation of 151,000 jobs. I don't look at this industry as just one legislation. There has to be a whole package. But reality is that we have car manufacturers in the EU that are investing 7 times more than they are doing in the EU in China. Why is that? We have Workers' Council, with whom I spoke, who can't understand why a battery production unit can't open in the EU, because the excuse was that EU salaries are very high, but then a Chinese company opens a battery production unit in the EU.
Benjamin, I want to ask you about from the industry's point of view. You know, the industry has suffered a lot of image disruption from the scandals, Dieselgate. You have the Volkswagen scandal. Wouldn't it be beneficial to just take on, you know, something big like this and regain the trust again of people?
Undoubtedly, it's a very critical point in time to regulate the car industry, because indeed what you have just mentioned has led to an impact. It has negatively impacted credibility. That's completely clear. But I would like to respond to something that Ms. Dalli has pointed out. The studies from the European Commission, for example, they looked at the proposals of 50% reduction, 45% reduction, 40% reduction, and they come to results which differ a bit from what you've just said. They see a negative impact on employment, and they do not see the societal benefit.
Okay.
This is a misinterpretation of figures, because what the Commission does when it speaks about jobs in the different sectors, because if we're speaking about this transition, we're speaking about different sectors, it speaks about the creation of jobs, and you know that figure. It speaks about the 92,000 creation jobs across the EU. It speaks about 151,000 creation of jobs. It speaks about the automotive sector, and you're right. But when it speaks about the 40%, it speaks about 12,000 impact on jobs across the EU until the 2030, which I do understand and I'm concerned about, because in my report I speak also about the just transition of workers to actually address workers in their regions and in their communities. But let's be frank, the European Commission, in its blueprint addressing the automotive sector, it speaks about the need to find employment, to find employees for 900,000 jobs between 2017 until 2025 because of retirements. So I kindly ask everyone, let's look at the whole picture and let's make sure that we have a legislation that delivers.
Okay, do you want to respond to that quickly?
I'm not sure that we can put these like equals next to each other. There will be job losses in parts of the industry. There will be jobs gained in other parts of the industry. The problem is we don't know where the new jobs will be created. We don't know when they will be created, and we aren't even sure that they actually are going to be created in the European Union. So this is where
it speaks about jobs in the EU.
This is where we would underline the need for a transition, but not a disruption.
All right, we don't have much time, but I would like to ask you, Miriam, is there a deficit between the talk of cutting emissions targets here in Europe versus the will of the people to actually go in that direction? Just very quickly.
I don't think so. I mean, even if you look at what cities are doing in various countries across the EU, I think we need to trigger change. I believe in a policy that triggers change. If we are going to sit down and expect things to happen, we'll see other continents taking the lead. I don't want that to happen for the European Union and its citizens, particularly for its workers.
All right. Thank you very much to both of you. Do you want very quickly, 10 seconds?
The regulation is going to drive transition. The problem is we are sitting in two camps: electrification, traditional combustion engine, and this is not going to bring us further.
This is clearly a debate. This is clearly a debate that's going to go on, because there's a lot more going on in Strasbourg, carbon emissions being one of them.